Hey ho, what's up everybody? This is DJ Arkum. I know everybody does gaming content, but nobody looks into gaming history. I found something that might be a little bit interesting to everybody, so we're going to give this a try. This is the first video game Wasn't What You Think. Now, I've done a little bit of research, and they started getting into it when I saw this to begin with, and I think they are getting into the same thing. The first video game was actually built on an oscilloscope machine by scientists, just as something to play around with to see what the machine could do. And I think they actually get into that in this, so here we go.
It starts with a quarter.
In the golden age of video games, kids scoured the land looking for quarters just to get a quick arcade fix.
Nobody compares to Atari.
They begged their parents for the latest console in desperate hopes of bringing the arcade home, all while one company ruled.
I have probably spent a community college tuition in arcades before they shut down and went to consoles.
Supreme during the dawn of the multi-billion-dollar video game industry.
We're Atari, and we invented the technology.
Everybody wanted a piece of that big pie.
But in order to take the throne, they'd first have to steal
The electronic game of the future.
They took a good idea and implemented it in a vastly superior way.
bargain,
We were just
90% of tech companies are just buying patents from things they see and then implementing them in much larger scale ways. That's how we got the mouse that got stolen from Xerox by Apple. I mean, it's just kind of how it happens.
totally out of cash.
battle,
They had better patent attorneys than we did, I'll tell you that.
and survive.
He had one goal in life, to get rid of me.
This is the story of how Atari took the world by storm.
We're Atari! Pew, pew, pew!
And inadvertently gave rise to one of the greatest selling arcade games of all time.
Pac-Man.
Yellow creature gobbles dots while being pursued through a maze.
Pac-Man made a lot of money. Make your head spin.
One of my favorite quotes ever. I had it on a t-shirt. It was, if video games had affected us as kids, we'd all be running around in darkened rooms, munching magic pills, and listening to electronic music. I used to wear that to raves every weekend.
For the whole thing
There were some real turkeys out there. It was a nightmare.
came crashing down.
The whole industry pretty much collapsed.
Ready? Okay, let's go.
In this bar, through the haze of smoke and libated hubbub, history was made. And soon, so was money, even if it was quarter by quarter. Because it was here, the world's first video game emerged. And there's a good chance you know what game it was.
If you ask anybody, they're gonna be like, well, the first video game was Pong, and it was by Atari.
Oh, you mean this Atari? The Atari started by this guy.
My name is Nolan Bushnell. I'm known for starting Atari.
But here's the thing.
First video game was Pong, and it was by Atari. And that is not the truth. that is not the truth.
Well, maybe then, the first video game was Pac-Man.
P-U-C-K, Pac-Man.
A
We all know the Puckman story.
Japanese game brought to America by this gentleman.
My name is Stan Jiraki, and I was the VP of Marketing at Bally Corporation.
Oh God, no. Pac-Man was not the first video game.
Okay, let's clear this up. Because the first video game wasn't Nolan's Pong
It's cool.
or Stan's Pac-Man.
Puckman.
Meet the PDP-1, which stands for Program Data Processor 1, meaning it was the first of its kind. And this is where the story of the first video game really begins.
The first prototype of the PDP-1 was given to MIT, and these students had unlimited access to this computer. And they were able to write software for it, even modify the hardware itself.
And with all that access, they were able to write all kinds of sciencey computational tasks, with programs punched as holes on paper tape, which they dubbed hacks, which incidentally is where the name hackers originated. But one bright mind who had access to the PDP-1 had far from malicious intentions.
I'm Steve Russell. The seniors decided that my name was Slug. They never would tell me why, but it stuck.
But this slug didn't so much leave a trail of slime, but forged a path of innovation.
I was interested in the PDP-1 because it had a display which wasn't available on anything else that students could get their hands on, and it was also reasonably fast. I did a little simulation and realized that I could make spaceships fly around in real time on this computer.
A realization that was about to change the world.
One of the things that was very much in the public mind at the time was the space race.
And it inspired Steve and his fellow hackers to dream up a game featuring two spaceships engaged in an interstellar dogfight, and they called it
Space War. When it finally got working, I decided it needed an exclamation point, so it got one.
But the main exclamations came from the people who played Steve's game.
People, they usually wanted to play it again. If the PDP-1 was idle.
That's cool. I knew it was built on an oscilloscope style machine like this. I didn't know what they were playing. I assumed it was something in a Pong style. I didn't realize it was that level of interactive. That's really cool.
Hangers-on would show up and start playing Space War. Sometimes players would tell me to go away. So I got them to add a note that developing new copies of Space War was more important than playing Space War.
And these new copies made their way around other campuses who also had the PDP-1.
Anywhere there was a PDP-1 with a display, there was usually a copy of Space War event.
It's the original shareware.
In 1964 at the University of Utah, it absolutely blows one particular student's mind. Which brings us back to Nolan.
It's cool.
Who was one such student?
I was mesmerized because my happy accident was I put myself through college working at an amusement park. And I knew the economics of the coin-operated game business. And I knew the minute I saw Space War that if I had a coin slot on it, that it would make money. The only problem was you divided 25 cents for 3 minutes into $1 million computer and the math didn't work.
So waiting patiently while the technology evolved and the math did work, by the end of the 1960s, Nolan teamed up with a video engineer named Ted Dabney to start a company.
Dabney was the complete opposite of Bushnell in personality.
He was a better video engineer than I was. I was a better digital engineer. Together we put together syzygy, which was the last S in the dictionary. It meant the alignment of planets, and I thought, yeah, that's a cool name.
Teaming up with manufacturer Nutting Associates, Nolan
Okay, we're just going to take a moment to laugh at that. Ha 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 ha. All right, moving on.
and Ted built their very own Space War game, calling their version
Computer Space.
It was a television recreation of the old Space War game.
Nolan Bushnell was able to take the basics of Space War and turn it into something commercial.
Unfortunately, Slug would never see a single quarter.
I was not flattered by Computer Space because it wasn't a very good imitation.
And where Slug Space War, thank you, could only be played on the large and expensive PDP-1, Nolan and Ted brought a little style to Computer Space.
Computer Space brought a little more sex appeal to the whole thing. It had curves, you know?
But to find out if the world was ready for the futuristic curves of Computer Space, Nolan and Ted would need to find a venue receptive to this unusual device. Which brings us back to this bar.
I did my first test at a Stanford bar, the Dutch Goose. A lot of engineering students from Stanford hung out there. And so it did really well.
So well that in 1971, over 1,000 cabinets of Computer Space were in the market. And people started to notice the world's first coin-operated video game.
My first introduction to electronic gaming was Computer Space. Yeah, it was very clear that this was something really unique. I knew that was going to be a big deal.
It was cool looking, and it showed up in the movie Soylent Green.
good to hear you laugh.
So things were looking positive for computer space. However,
It was a false positive
and Nolan knew that shortly after its debut at the Dutch Goose.
because I found out that any drunk in a bar could not play computer space. It's too difficult for the average person. And so I knew that in order to be successful, I had to have a game that any drunk in a bar could play.
And so Nolan had a game that drunks couldn't play, and a company that they almost certainly couldn't say.
Syzygy.
But not to worry.
Turned out when we went to incorporate, a Mendocino candle company had already taken Syzygy, so we had to do something else.
And where Nolan found the idea for computer space elsewhere, for the renaming of his company, once again, he looked to a pre-existing idea.
Weiqi. It was invented in ancient China more than 2,500 years ago. It made its way onto Japan, where it became known as Go.
And at a certain point in the game, players would shout,
Atari,
which basically meant checkmate. But don't worry, this game is far from won. After a name change and a modest profit from computer space, Atari was in business. So it was time to hire more help.
There were only like 3 or 4 of us in the company.
And one of them was this man, Al Alcorn.
It was our first engineer that we had hired.
I was 24 years old. I'm right out of college.
Kind of employee number 4, because I had a receptionist, which was my old babysitter, which was actually before Al.
Well, as Atari took baby steps into uncharted territory, a completely separate company was about to change the game, or at least start marketing a new kind of one.
Magnavox was a consumer electronics company. Their business was selling televisions in big wooden cabinets.
But the ping pong of progress is now in the hands of this television company, who, in an effort to sell more televisions, had a rather revolutionary thought.
The brown box was the first time that somebody said, what if we could put images on the TV from this direction?
Ready? Here we go.
When they licensed this rather revolutionary game
Now watch me pick him up.
from a man named Ralph Baer in the early 70s.
It was amazing that he could do it at all with the technology that he had. It was all analog stuff.
Well, okay, 1-0.
Was the simplest game that was ever conceived of to this day. One moving object and 2 paddles.
Magnavox took this simple brown box and this nameless simple game
He's getting tricky.
and repurposed it as the Magnavox Odyssey. And it didn't take long to cross Nolan's path.
I attended a Magnavox demonstration of Odyssey.
You can increase the challenge of Odyssey tennis by increasing or decreasing the speed of the tennis ball.
I was quite surprised about how bad it was. Had no sound, had no score. The game was just barely a game. But I noticed that people were kind of having fun with it.
Well, Nolan Bushnell was eager to play, but he wanted to play a different game.
Since Odyssey was a consumer game, I thought maybe there's a consumer game.
It's crazy. You look at those little chips there. Hang on. These little chips here. If you've ever opened up a Nintendo cartridge or like a Super Nintendo cartridge, this is essentially what they look like on the inside. It's just got like a big plastic shell to keep it safe around it.
A different game.
Since Odyssey was a consumer game, I thought maybe there's a consumer game market.
And while Nolan pondered this as a possible future for Atari,
it happened to coincide to Al Alcorn's first day.
Which brings us back to Al.
Nolan just told me,
I want you to create a ping pong game with a paddle that goes up and down on each side, ball going across, net, score, and when somebody gains a point, I want to hear a crowd of thousands.
But what he didn't say was that this was exactly what he had just seen on the Magnavox Odyssey.
Missed it.
never occurred to me that this was bullshit.
Which will most definitely come back and ping them in the palm.
I got this great idea, you guys, like out of nowhere. Just disregard that other thing that just came out.
The electronic game of the future.
But in the meantime, Al Alcorn was hard at work, struggling with complicated things.
I'm building this thing with TTL chips, and I was up to like 70 chips. I broke the budget.
Refining.
It really wasn't much fun to play. So I added the counter and the speed up.
Adjusting.
Then I added the reflection off the paddles to give different angles.
Tweaking. And don't forget,
the roar of a crowd of thousands.
Until finally,
I was impressed.
In fact, Nolan was so impressed.
In my mind, this was starting to turn into a coin-op game.
But it was a game without a name. And having learned from his mistakes,
syzygy.
It was always better to go to short. Pong? Simple dimple.
The potential success of Pong was in the air.
We made a little box that we could put it on a tabletop, and we put a coin box on the side of it.
And if you remember,
in order to be successful, I had to have a game that any drunk in a bar could play.
So, to find out if Pong could pass Nolan's ultimate test, he tried it out at a different bar. This one.
We drop it off, and my expectation was nobody would play it because it was just a dumb game. Within about a week or two, bartender calls us up, says the machine stopped working. Shit. So after work, I go over and check the machine out, see what's wrong with it. So I open up the coin box to give myself a free play. And when I open the coin box, all these coins gushed out. Wow, I have found the problem. The goddamn thing's making too much money. All of a sudden, we get hit in the ass by lightning, and this thing is now, it's a runaway hit.
Magical.
And not just magical, but financially viable.
If a coin-operated game did $10 a day, that was big money. Pong was doing $35 or $40 a day.
And so Nolan upscaled.
I figured we had just enough money to make about 12 units. Ted drew up a cabinet. Literally in a month, we had all the pieces, put them together, and we sold them for cash.
It was crazy. We were selling these things as fast as we could make them.
The first Pong game was $320, and we were selling them for $950 or some crazy number. So now we had roughly $12,000.
And even though things were looking good for Atari,
Ted Dabney wasn't on board with the direction the company was going. It could also have been just very, very difficult to compete with a personality like Bushnell's.
And so, Ted Dabney left Atari, and Nolan really put his skates on when they upscaled and moved into an old roller skating rink, which is now, incidentally, a bingo hall.
With that, we were able to push up to 100 a week.
Soon, they upscaled again, and they were doing so well, they even set up a branch in Japan, which ironically is where most people thought Atari had come from.
My brother thought I worked for a Japanese company for quite a while.
It is very, very difficult for a Western company to enter the Japanese market, but they showed up and they're like, "We're Atari, come work with us, we're from America, pew, pew, pew."
And we were ramping up as fast as we could.
And spending lots of money in the process.
And even then, I think that we were still figuring it out as we go along.
They kind of hit like a cultural pinpoint, though, where Japan was on the uprise in technology, and I guarantee they saw it as a way to get into an American market as well. Like, it was a great cross bridge.
But as it happens, other companies were working it out too.
We were heavily copied.
And just like Nolan, who had been, shall we say, inspired by Slug,
it wasn't a very good imitation.
The competition also had been inspired by Atari's computer game.
Everybody is releasing all kinds of Pong clones around the world.
We at Atari managed to build a couple of thousand Pongs, but our competition built, 10,000 or something ridiculous.
We had TV ping pong, paddle ball, Ellie Pong, TV tennis, paddle paddle, Pongtron, and let's not forget pub pong.
We did not believe in patents at that point in time because if you sued them, they would just go away and reform somewhere else until you'd wasted your money.
But someone who did believe in patents was Ralph Baer and Magnavox.
A Magnavox exclusive.
Who had not only made the first home video game console, but also the first patent for a video game.
About that time, we got a letter from Magnavox. informing us that we were in violation of this fundamental patent on video games.
And so, between the copycats and the legal fees,
they had better patent attorneys than we did, I'll tell you that.
We were just totally out of cash.
With Magnavox hot on Atari's heels,
we were just totally out of cash.
Nolan had an idea to bring them back from the brink by returning to the idea of a home game console version of Pong.
It was a very, very, very crude prototype because we didn't have any real money, but we knew that Sears was a big consumer company.
Get a 100% solid-state color TV.
So we cold called Chicago Sears.
You sell ping pong tables and pool tables for rec rooms. What about Pong?
It was a cold call that quickly turned hot.
It was basically, how much you're going to sell it to us for, what's it going to cost, and how many can you make? And I figured we could build 75,000 of them.
They came back with an order for 150,000.
Shit. So now we had this contract from Sears.
And now we solved all the problems except one. We didn't have enough cash to build the inventory. I talked to Sears and I said, you know, I can't afford to build that many. And so they said, I'll introduce you to Sears Bank. Simple dimple. We were profitable the minute the units dropped off the line.
It's not just another video game, it's a real Atari.
At the end of that year, we'd produced 180,000 Pong games. Knocked it out of the park.
Pew, pew, pew! By 1976, Atari was once again making money. But their ugly ongoing lawsuit with Magnavox,
It's Odyssey, America's favorite home video game,
was getting in the way of Nolan's future plans.
We were trying to raise another level of venture capital for the Atari 2600.
Ah, the system you want is the Atari 2600. That's so fast.
Exactly, not so fast. Because first, Nolan had some business to attend to.
We had this sort of Damocles hanging over our head. And so they said, you got to get rid of that Magnavox problem. And so I said, to get you off my back, we settled for $500,000, paid up, 100,000 years for 5 years, with the proviso that you have to go after everybody else. Well, they were happy about that.
So it was bad news for Pub Pong and good news for Atari.
We started to innovate right away.
Who proceeded to develop the Atari 2600.
Simultaneous, the microprocessors were getting better. Now we could do software in a cartridge. But what we didn't have is we didn't have enough money. We get the product all designed, but you know, we needed a whole new production line, another facility. You know, it was just too much. And so we said, well, maybe we can get a corporate investor.
Well, actually, they got a little bit more than that.
We got introduced to Warner Communications, and they were very, very interested.
So interested.
Yeah, there's a few dollars there.
In fact.
But they wanted to buy the whole company.
Right, the whole company. Nolan had only needed
$5 million.
But instead, what he ended up with was?
It was $28 million. Life-changing cash.
Don't watch television tonight. Play it.
And all that cash helped Atari launch the 2600 in the fall of 1977.
Attention shoppers, the new Atari cartridge game is in.
A mighty console that firmly cemented Atari as the most popular game console company in America.
The Atari 2600 was the first console to actually bring that experience home and say, hey, you can go out and you can play the arcade games. If you want to play Asteroids in the arcade, Atari was like, go ahead and do that. That's our machine. We'll make money on that too. But if you buy the cartridge, you can have that same experience at home. And that was,
you know, kind of
something that video games had never offered before that.
Every time you sell a new cartridge, you've got more capability.
No other company offers you as many different video game cartridges as Atari.
And with this promise, Atari needed game programmers, like David Crane, who joined Atari in 1977.
It was a lot more than just programming. From the original concept to every pixel of art, all the sound effects, music, that was all being done by a single person.
Other single persons who came to work for Atari?
Steve Jobs, he showed up at our place and said, you've got a neat company. I'm not going to leave until you hire me.
He was young, he was cheap, you're hired.
Atari was on top of the world, and the days of financial hardship were behind them.
And there was nobody over 30 in the company, and it's a crazy front end with like a fun house. People running around the production floor with skateboards.
A actual crash in the 80s and everything like that. Because basically it was the oversaturation of games that caused the game market to crash. Kind of like what's going on right now. Oversaturation of underwhelming product.
Nolan was this crazy futurist out there pushing the company.
But when push came to shove, Nolan's new boss didn't think much of his leadership style.
Warner, they increasingly had more and more friction with the way we did it.
So in 1978, they inserted their own player in the game.
So they hired the antithesis of a Silicon Valley guy, Ray Kassar, but he knew nothing about startup companies, knew nothing about the game industry, knew nothing about Silicon Valley.
But Ray did have some skin in the game.
Burlington sells magnificent furs like those you see at the finest furriers.
He had become a vice president at Burlington Industries, and none of us had any respect for him because, yeah, he was a fabric guy doing towels and socks. We had no understanding of why they would hire him.
It was really the wrong guy.
And from the get-go, it was crystal clear. Player one,
I thought Ray was a little too fancy for Atari.
Did not like player two.
Ray and Nolan did not get along well because it was just a whole different culture.
The minute he came in, he had one goal in life: to get rid of me.
The staggering success of Atari was unlike anything the world had ever seen.
Let's see what we can come up with next.
But there was more to come. And lurking in a mysterious far-off land, something was coming that would swallow the video games industry whole. So leaving Nolan draped in an awkward shawl of a boss with haberdashery experience,
I was not really happy with Ray.
We now need to turn to the next chapter in this story of the rise of video games. And no video game would climb higher.
Space Invaders.
It wasn't Space Invaders.
And into the zeitgeist of popular culture.
It wasn't Galaxian.
Then this pellet-hungry, ghost-fearing, expressionless yellow disc named...
Puckman.
Right. Puckman.
Puckman.
But it wouldn't stay Puckman for long. And that brings us back to Stan.
My name is Stan Jarocki, and I was the VP of Marketing at Bally Corporation.
And Stan knew a thing or two about coin ops.
Well, I'll tell you what. I've been in the coin-operated amusement industry for around 50 years when I retired. 50 years. That makes me an old man. Want to hear the story?
Well, the story of this career starts with Stan being a musical tastemaker.
Where I was selecting music for jukeboxes. I worked in about every damn department in that place, and I knew the jukebox inside and out.
In fact, anything with a coin slot.
Including vending, cigarette vending.
And finally, at Bally Midway, video games.
I was asked to join Bally,
who with their extensive pinball machine experience, around 1972 tasked Stan with a rather predictable task.
We were heavily copied.
You guys ought to make a game like Pong. It's selling like hotcakes. So that's how I got in the video game business.
But Stan's future involved far more than Pong knockoffs. And that brings us, and Stan, for that matter, to Japan.
Because of my first trip overseas with the secretary of the company, we went to Japan together, and he licensed a game called Space Invaders. Even the Atari missile game, whatever it was called,
Missile Command,
wasn't as good as Space Invaders.
Entitled Japan Space Invaders, now licensed to Bally Midway for American video arcades, was also the first game to introduce the leaderboard.
And what made that game money, if I asked you? Could you give me the answer? Get your name on the board, and you played it until you beat the guy on top. That, to me, was one of the great innovations in video gaming.
And so with Space Invaders, Midway was on the bitmap, and Stan would often return to Japan looking for their next big hit.
He had a regular trip to look for new ideas. The Japan trips were special because it was a different culture. He had a good eye for that.
And Jim should know, Because not only was he
advertising and sales promotion manager at Midway,
he is also Stan's son. And in late 1979, on one of those Japan trips, Stan scored a meeting in Tokyo with a couple of bigwigs in an up-and-coming company called Namco.
Namco was one of the companies that actually pioneered the amusement business.
They were very successful making kiddie rides with Disney characters and other fun things. And of course, when video games started, they wanted in on the ground floor.
And one of the ways they did was by acquiring the Japanese arm of a struggling American company who, as you might remember, had come in guns a-blazing to the Japanese market.
We're Atari! Come work with us! We're from America! Pew, pew, pew!
However, as you might also remember at the time, had found themselves in a financially calamitous situation, with Magnavox hot on their heels.
We were just totally out of cash.
And after a little while, Atari ended up selling it all to Namco.
Simple Dimple.
Giving Namco instant ownership of a vast library of games that they could sell, but only in Japan.
Namco, being a Japanese company, had a presence in Japan but didn't have a presence outside of the country.
But this was something that Namco was hoping to change. So they hired young game designer Toru Iwatani, who created Namco's very first original game title, called GB, along with artist and character designer Tadashi Yamashita.
I was requested to design for this game, so I created the character and the art on the cabinet. For GB, I designed the bees on the cabinet side panel. And for Bombi, I designed the character on the cabinet in the plane dropping the bombs.
But it was Namco's next game that Toru Iwatani and Tadashi Yamashita collaborated on that would take the idea of characters in games to the next level.
You know, Toru Iwatani saw that men and women were visiting the video arcade together, but fundamentally, sort of the men were playing the games.
These games emphasize power, aggression, macho, and manipulation.
And he's like, well, these girls are in the video arcade, they're standing around, like, they're not actually playing. Like, wouldn't it make a bunch of money if we could get something that they would play as well? And so he was like, well, let's think about something that could be attractive that might get a girl in a Japanese arcade to say, oh, that's cute.
For all these activists that think they're the first people to think that girls belong in video games, shut the fuck up, please, and thank you.
In 1979, I was shown a game by Mr. Iwatani, and I actually played the game, and he requested me to design for the game.
And that game was Puckman.
P-U-C-KのPuckman.
Character designer Tadashi Yamashita was about to start working on a rather interesting project.
The name Puckman comes from Paku Paku, which is an onomatopoeia for gobble gobble in Japanese.
But when it came to making Puckman cute, Tadashi Yamashita had his work cut out.
Just a moving head. I mean, a character like that. It looks like a cut-off head moving. It's kind of disgusting. So for the visual, adding arms and legs on Pac-Man, it gives him more human-like features, and he's more expressive.
And most importantly,
cute.
And when Stan saw Puckman at that fateful meeting with Namco, well, he thought Puckman was more than cute.
And why was Puckman so great? Because virtually every other video game, there was blood and thunder. You agree? You know that. There was never a game that was introduced that would invite female players to play the game of any age. Woman would never go in an arcade by herself, and that sold me on the game.
Stan knew he had a hit on his hands and rushed the game back to Bally Midway headquarters.
The first thing I get...
See, that's interesting to me because I know plenty of girls that play games like Call of Duty or, you know, shit like that. And I'm like, what do you mean these blood and guts games wouldn't attract to some girls? What are you talking about? That makes no sense to me. Were girls like that more effeminate in the 70s? I don't know.
Chewed out by the chairman of the board. Why did you buy that thing? Blah, 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 blah.
And everybody said, no, we really don't want that game. We want a racing game, or we want this clown on a unicycle game. But Stan said, no, this is the game.
When you conquer this game, you really come away satisfied.
And he basically bet his job on it.
With his job on the line, pressure was on for Stan.
It had to be Americanized.
Buy that man a lottery ticket right now, right then.
Pac-Man was one F away from being a very different name that teenagers would have had a field day spray painting.
All I knew is I couldn't have Pac-Man on the streets in America.
And with the flip of a letter, Pac-Man changed
to Pac-Man.
And when Pac-Man was released in October of 1980, it was an instant hit. And Stan's job was well and truly secured.
Brief sigh of elation.
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man.
Midway Manufacturing, feverishly turning out 350 Pac-Man games every day.
Young people, old people, men, women, grandmas.
Don't forget the junks in the bar.
Everybody was walking up and playing this thing. It was in continuous use.
Pac-Man made an awful lot of money. Make your head spin. Our company was making over 1,200 video games a day. That was more than the industry on a whole was making in a week.
And despite what this song implied, no one was sick of Pac-Man. This yellow, nondescript collection of pixels was able to jump out of the screen and into popular culture. And it wasn't just by chance.
Pac-Man was the first game that really had story and characters. Ever heard of Ms. Pac-Man and Mr. Pac-Man? Of course. Can you think of any character that Atari did? No.
And that's because the characters are
cute.
And we can thank Tadashi Yamashita for that.
いろんなところで話を聞くとすごいらしいと。Pac-Man が日本より全然すごい
I
らしい
heard from many sources Pac-Man was doing well, and back then the US was leading when it came to all these games. And it exceeded America's game. Now it's Japan's turn.
Overnight, Pac-Man became an unstoppable merchandising juggernaut, spawning countless arcade sequels and even its own cartoon.
What a time to be caught without my power pellets!
I went to Hanna-Barbera and we struck a deal just like that.
When you get to do your own animated TV show, you're beyond video games.
Pac-Man enjoyed staggering success in 1981 and 1982. But then, by 1983, for Pac-Man and the entire video game industry, things began to change.
Play them for fun, but invest in them at your own risk.
Doctors are starting to see our Space Invaders elbow, Defender wrist, and Pac-Man pinky. These are really coming into medical offices.
And be it these chronic debilitating ailments,
we call them the side effects of high-tech wreck.
Or the saturated video game market, the industry was quite literally running out of quarters.
How long will this smashing success last for video games?
It was caused by an oversaturation of underwhelming product, and people weren't able to kind of zero in on something. It didn't get fixed until Nintendo came out with the NES.
By 1983, the entire video game industry was in trouble.
The market was getting hyper saturated.
American companies very often just machine gun spray the market with products. Because if I put out 50 products and I only need 25 to hit, if I can get 50 or 60 of those 100, then I make money.
Now you can bring the arcade experience home. Red Television 2.
Emerson Arcadia 2001.
You have companies that have nothing to do with video games forming video game divisions. Everybody wanted a piece of that big pie.
And there were some real turkeys out there, and it was a nightmare.
Today it was announced that Quaker Oats is entering the video game business.
No, shit, don't talk about that. It was that bad.
You had these giant releases that were hyped, like E.T.
E.T.?
That was so bad.
Stores were getting stuck with inventory they couldn't sell.
And on top of all that, computers were coming.
IBM personal computer.
This is a Commodore home computer system.
Macintosh.
And not even Pac-Man could outrun those.
The operators were not buying as much new equipment. We were saturated in Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man for sure.
Which at Bally Midway presented Stan and his son Jim with a difficult decision.
My dad brought me into his office and he said, I hate to do this, but I don't want anybody thinking that I have any favoritism at all in this company. So you're going to be the first one out the door. It was tough for me, but it was the right thing to do.
But it wasn't just Jim who lost his job.
The whole industry pretty much collapsed.
For the fabric man who presided over Atari, it was curtains for him as well.
Atari. I mean, if you're going to bring your kid in, you've got to be willing to cut him. I respect it. It sucks, but I respect it.
Never got the message. What happened virtually overnight, more than 6,000 people lost their jobs. The company collapsed.
Leaving Nolan, Al, and the guys scrambling to hold on to their jobs. Well, actually, Nolan decided to jump ship when he saw that the writing was on the wall.
I said, I don't want to be presiding over the corpse of Atari because of you bozos. And you don't say that to the executives of Warner. But they said, I think you need to leave, Nolan. And I said, I think I do.
So Nolan left Atari and took with him a small fragment of the company that he then transformed into every kid's coin-operated paradise.
Arcade favorites like skee-ball and kiddie rides.
Chuck E. Cheese. Can't say it without smiling. Done.
And as for these guys, they also saw the writing on the wall and fled the sinking ship long before Atari went under.
The four of us had a meeting with Ray Kassar in 1979 and pointed out that we had been responsible for 60% of Atari's sales in the previous year by creating games that people wanted to play and buy. And to him, it was a corporate product, not a creative product. Ray Kassar told us that we were not important.
You're just a bunch of high-strung prima donnas, a dime a dozen.
That was obviously a strange position to take.
I realized how ridiculous Ray Kassar was, and I realized I couldn't work for him anymore.
We walked out of that meeting knowing that our future was not at Atari.
Well, their future was creating Activision.
Bringing you the most creative and original home video games.
But that's another story.
The Atari 5200 Super System.
After the early exit of Atari's best people, followed by the crash of '83, the company did limp on, with failure after failure.
Jaguar by Atari.
Until finally closing its doors for good in 1992. And as for the great Stan Jarocki,
I'll tell you what, I did my duty, we made money, very successful. I had a great family backing me up. And my lovely wife, as she could show her face.
He's a pretty humble guy. He doesn't need people fawning over him. He knew what he did. I was there, I did my part, but Stan is the guy.
But sadly for the man who brought Pac-Man to the world, Stan passed away in May of 2024, just weeks before his 95th birthday and mere weeks after this interview was shot.
94 years old. Man lived an entire life. Man lived a couple of people's lifetimes. Respect to this man. Rest in peace.
He's probably the coolest guy I ever met. Nobody ever handed him anything. He worked hard for everything he got. And probably that's one of the lessons that I love the most about him, because he taught that to me. And I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of our family. And I wouldn't have another dad. He's the best ever.
Are you kidding me? I'm the biggest pain in the butt you ever seen.
But the story of video games, as sprawling as it is, all started in a lab, which means we finally wormed our way back to Slug. And here at the Computer History Museum near Silicon Valley, the great creator is reunited with the video game that started it all, Space War. Thank you.
We still play the 60-year-old release is because it still works. And I'm sure there are bugs lurking in it, but they aren't easily discoverable.
Slug's bugless masterpiece was not only the first computer game, it was the first computer game people enjoyed.
My timing is off.
Well, when it came to making money from Space War, Slug's timing was definitely off.
And I knew the minute I saw Space War that it would make money.
But Space War couldn't have been protected in any way. You couldn't patent software. You couldn't copyright software. Yeah, got me again. It was try something and see if you can improve it. Don't attempt to exclude people. In other words, the open source idea. The results are frequently interesting.
Nothing more so than the incredible story Space War began all those years ago.
Oh, this is a very bad sport.
But the game of home consoles isn't over. And if you thought the liberal reuse of other people's ideas in this story was morally dubious,
isn't that a fun story?
Then just wait when we start playing with power.
That was really cool. That was well researched. That was really cool. They got good people. Man, respect to that. I'm probably going to watch a few more of those. I saw a couple pop up on my timeline. Those were cool. Well done to them. Let's see. Diamond Plus Documentaries. Make sure you go and check them out. Give them a sub. Thanks for watching.